The continuity changes that we're seeing is how to make your work style available for your end customers, no matter where they're at. They need the ability to access their applications. They need the ability to take orders, do troubleshooting, and VDI is the way that they're doing it. Virtual desktop is an extremely important way that they're keeping their businesses running. Hi, my name is Illyse Sheaffer. I am a software-defined infrastructure specialist with Intel. Trying to understand VDI is really important, but you need to start at the workload. You need to understand what the workload needs, meaning what does the application need for the user to be successful? Is it memory dependent? Is it CPU? Is it gigahertz dependent? VDI in and of itself is a very CPU and gigahertz frequency hungry application set, and then you have your applications inside of that. And the way to get the most amount of users on a hypervisor or on your infrastructure, each server in and of itself, is to have the highest amount of cores and gigahertz behind it. It's a combination of the both. So the second gen Intel Xeon processors are right there to help you. The more memory in a user profile that's needed, the larger the memory on the hypervisor needs to be. The more CPU it needs, the more the hypervisor needs CPU. Now, you can mix and match your DDR memory with your Intel Optane persistent memory to come out with a better TCO for your VDI profiling. But to start, for those task users, those are the ones that are doing the Office applications and a browser or two, maybe 3 browser sessions. So those sessions are usually using about 6 gig of memory. If they're on Windows 7, because some people are still, they use more like 4 gig of memory, up to 8 gig of memory for Windows 10. And those sessions do not require a lot of memory on the hypervisor, but they require a lot of CPU and gigahertz if you are trying to get as many users as possible on each hypervisor. If that user is using more industry applications that require more memory, whether it be an ERP system, whether it be a healthcare system, when the memory is above 8 gig, 10, 16, 32 even gig in its size, then the hypervisor needs to start at 1 terabyte or more. Don't forget about the network. Networking is important. If your users are coming in and you've got 75 users coming into one hypervisor, then your backend network needs to be able to be prepared for that. So 10 gig, 25 gig, 40 gig, you need to understand what that network latency is in between that application, that hypervisor set, and the back applications to which they're going to be talking to. Customers who have resources and capacity already available, whether they be schools, hospitals, or large business customers, they can utilize those resources that they currently have. If they're using a hyper-converged infrastructure, they can possibly use that. They just need to understand what the applications need and how much capacity they have. If the customer runs out, the employer runs out of those resources, they can go to a public cloud. Choosing the right cloud to scale quickly to, if you don't have resources on site, there are dependencies that you need to understand. You need to understand if you're going to put something into a public cloud, what the platform of that public cloud is, and how easily you are going to be able to bring it back if you choose to bring it back. If you're using an x86 Intel infrastructure, that you want to use x86 infrastructure in your public cloud. That way you can migrate and actually scale out your application and the VDI profiles from one to the other and not have a problem of having to have inconsistency in drivers or anything else that's being used. When you're using desktop as a service, then your responsibility for the hardware and the underlying infrastructure becomes less needed. So, as a customer, as a consumer, you don't have to take care of the servers. You don't need to know what the backend hypervisor is or what it's built on. All you care about is having a desktop and it being available. But now you have to understand your workload. What companies don't realize or may not realize now, definitely the networking it takes and the application. The applications are important. The size to the application is extremely important. To size and understanding that you can size your VDI infrastructure, whether it be on-prem or off, that you size according to how many users and the risk mitigation that you might have if a hypervisor were to go down. So I put 75 users on a hypervisor. I have 4 hypervisors. I got 300 users. If one were to fail, the other hypervisors would need to take that workload, or you have to have that failover. We need to understand that the services behind VDI, that they are communicating in a quick, robust way, understanding the latencies of interdependency from that VDI session to the end database. But we also need to understand the security model there, whether we need to put it in a private tunnel or we need a direct connect solution or express connect solution. Another problem that people are seeing within the VDI infrastructure and everybody working from home is a lot of attacks. So you need to understand, how do you do DAS denial attacks? How do you do injections? Do you have a virtual firewall, an application firewall that makes sure that the traffic that's coming to your data center or to your infrastructure in a public cloud is secure and meant to be, otherwise it should be shunned. So when you plan migrations from Windows 7 to Windows 10, please note that Windows 10 does take more memory and it's a little more flash intensive. So where it was 4 gig of memory on Windows 7, it is now around 8 gig on Windows 10. There is more flash content, which means that you're going to use more CPU, more gigahertz in a VDI type of an infrastructure, as well as on your local laptop if you're to run it there. Now, VDI does allow you to manage the OS centrally. One place to make a change versus multiple places to make a change. So while it may not be cheaper to do a VDI solution, is actually troubleshooting is less expensive. The time to keep it up and maintain it is less expensive. You can get it, install it, create that image, and blast it out for your users to use, one to many, and you're running and gunning. Also centralized patching, centralized antivirus or malware at the core. So it's one storage. So you have one area to do your detection of any kind of issues from a file standpoint. Device management is something that we're all going to have to get better at. So understanding the devices, putting an agent on the devices that come back into the infrastructure. If they are owned by the individual employee, they need to be notified that you're going to make sure by putting some agents on there to do antivirus, scan analysis. For those people who had to buy devices because the employees weren't able to provide them, please be prepared to scrub them, to validate, so that you're able to see whether the actual hardware has been infected or not, from boot all the way up to the OS. We get to see a lot of different infrastructures and a lot of different industries. So we see the small, the medium, the large. We understand what is going on by industry. We can help you with sizing ability. So when you don't know what you don't know about your workload, we understand what the workloads are. You tell us what they are. We'll ask the questions to maybe dig in a little deeper if you created those workloads and they're self-written versus off the shelf. If they're off the shelf, we already know a lot about the workload and we've already seen it just because of the breadth and depth of our company and where we've been and the software that we write. So we have that ability to bring that knowledge to you and to help you go through the motions to get to your perfect infrastructure for your company, not the one size fits all.